Nothing would make me happier than to think of the two of you, not just in the arms of God, which you are in all the time, but that occasionally, often, in your case, you get to be in God's arms, mediated through someone else, and that is awesome. But I know that you can't do Skype tonight. This is a rumor that I heard. So I tried to think if there was something that I could do to help that out. Probably not much, because I know there's no substitute for what that is and what that has been and what that will always be. On the other hand, I thought, well, maybe if I make a little video, then you could sort of hear a bedtime story maybe from your godmother, and that might help just a tiny bit. Or maybe the countdown is just so intense right now you don't even care, and you're just looking at the minutes and saying, you could just watch grass grow between now and, is it 1:40? One of you arrives tomorrow, and 3 o'clock, I think the other, something like that. I've got that in my phone, so I'll be praying for that amazing experience when it happens. But until then, I thought maybe we would just do a little bedtime story, a little spiritual bedtime story. Those are the only kind you're ever going to get from your godmothers. And actually not a whole story, maybe just a page from a really good story. Because I was thinking about you two today, of course. I think about you two every day, and I always will. But I was thinking today about becoming real. I really like the word real. I think when I first became a Christian, I was pretty excited about the word true. That's the word that I used all the time. I'd never thought of my religion as true. I'd never thought of God's love as true. I just loved that word. And it's a very important word. And truth, veritas, right? Latin. That's a very important word in the Christian faith. On the other hand, as I've gotten older, I've become very much a fan of this other word, real. In fact, if someone asked me now about God, I would say that I love God because God is real. I wouldn't say it's because God is true. If someone said, why do you read the Bible? I wouldn't say it's because the Bible is true. I would probably say because the stories in the Bible are real. So how do you become real? I mean, what is real? But as soon as you say, like, how do you become real? I mean, there's really only one story. There's only one story. I mean, other people might tell you different stories. Wait a minute, I have a story here. I'm in my office, by the way. This is my office here. How you know this is my office. Here's my pen. It has a feather on it. I'm a fan of quill pens. I cannot tell you, this is just a feather actually taped to a pen. Do you know how happy this makes me? Do you know I have my students in my Harry Potter class? They have to tape feathers to their pens. They love it. They actually write better too, but that's another story. Anyway, I'll put it this way. Here's the book we're going to be reading tonight. The Velveteen Rabbit. You knew I was going to say that, right? Right? Probably? I mean, I talked about being real. How do you become real? Bueller? Anyway. Very good story. I suggest you read the whole thing. I won't give you any homework assignments about it, but if you don't own it, let me know. I'll sort that out for you. I'm going to read one section here of one conversation with our dear Velveteen Rabbit and the older skin horse. Now, for those of you that know the story, the skin horse is this really wise character who lives in the nursery with all the other toys. But all the other toys have like blinking lights and batteries and all kinds of complicated parts. And the Velveteen Rabbit is kind of feeling, well, he's feeling two things. One, he's trying to figure out what is real. And two, he's trying to figure out, like, how's he ever going to be popular or played with or anything with in this nursery with all these, like, you know, great Christians who've come to a Christian, I'm sorry, we're talking about a nursery, not a college, right? These toys that have sort of different things that he doesn't have. And they make noises he doesn't make. And they have gifts. They look like gifts. Really, they're just noise and, you know, flashing lights, but he thinks they're gifts. And he doesn't have any of those. So he's beginning to worry. Too bad he didn't have a godmother. Anyway, I'm just going to read you the conversation he has with the skin horse about his problem. You can just make sure you're curled up somewhere. You know, it's bedtime. You know, he'll pull up the covers, get comfortable. Here we go. The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the other toys. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of his hairs, especially on his tail, had been pulled out and made into string bead necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive new to boast and swagger, and by break their mainsprings and pass away. And he knew they were only toys, and would never turn into anything else. For nursery magic is a very strange thing, and it is a very wonderful thing, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced, like the skin horse, understand what it's really all about. "What is real?" asked the rabbit one day. "What is real?" when they were lying side by side in the nursery. "Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle?" "Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, when anyone loves you for a long, long time, and not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" said the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt." "Does it happen all at once, like being wound up?" asked the rabbit. "Or is it more bit by bit?" "It doesn't happen all at once," said the skin horse. "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily, or who have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints, and you are very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand." My dears, being loved as you are, as you have been, and now as you are doing for one another, is exciting. But it is also incredibly, incredibly miraculous, because you are becoming real. But what do you have to do? Do you have to do something about that? So last story. And remember, as you become real, just remember that there is no such thing as ugly. That's a point that needs to be made a second time. Only to people, as the skin horse says, who don't understand. Don't ever take anyone's assessment of ugliness. Remember, that word has different forms. When you call something ungodly, you're calling it ugly. When you call something abhorrent, you're calling it ugly. And even if you just call it strange, you're calling it ugly. So remember, people that don't understand becoming real and don't understand that means you're going to look a little worn by the process, but you're going to be wiser instead of neater. Don't be swayed by these people. They can't have any other word but ugly because they don't even know what they're looking at. Things that are real are beautiful. Okay, so we're almost done here. One more little story. To answer the question, what do you have to do to love like this and to be loved like this? Once upon a time, there was a brother and a sister. The brother was a little bit older than his sister. And one day, they went trick-or-treating for Halloween. And they both got a lot of candy. And the older brother, being an older brother, just ate all of his candy, almost in one night. But what he noticed is his younger sister. She collected the candy. She put it in a box. She had names for it. She only had one piece a day. It was driving him crazy. He really wanted some of her candy, but he knew better than to try to take it from her because she knew every piece that was in there. She was so proud of herself. He went into his room one day and he found an old box. And on the top it said, "My Marble Collection." And he had a collection of marbles for years. And he hadn't really looked at it for a while. In fact, he really didn't even like the collection anymore, but he got this great idea. He picks up the box and goes to his sister's room and walks in and says, "I've thought about it. I'm really going to miss them. But I'm ready to trade my marble collection for your candy collection. I mean, if you would. Well, she's young, but she's old enough to know that this is a really good trade. What St. Paul would say, the perishable for the imperishable. So she said, of course I'll do this trade. And she said, well, I want a little bit longer just to play with my candy, just for a few more minutes. So he leaves and goes back to his room, and he is so proud of himself because he's really pulled one over on her. He doesn't really care about these marbles at all, and he's going to get candy for them instead of just throwing them away. So he opens up the box, and he's kind of waiting for his sister to call him back in, and he notices there's a couple of marbles in there that are actually pretty cool looking. I mean, not many, but there's one or two, and he takes them out, and then he sees there's like 3 or 4, and he finally figures there's like a small handful that are just actually very cool. So he puts those under his pillow. He's like, she's kind of young. She's not going to know the difference. It's still a box full of marbles. And then she calls him in, and he takes the ones that he's going to give away, and he really checks again to make sure he's got that 4 or 5 left there. He's going to come back later and look at those and have that and the candy. So he goes back to his sister's room, goes in, gives her the box very ceremonially, pretends like he's going to miss them, takes the candy, and then he heads back to his room. And when he's back in his room, he hears his sister just singing and playing and naming the marbles. She's ecstatic. She knows she's made a great decision. And then slowly, he doesn't hear much sound anymore, and he can tell that she has just gone to sleep. She's probably laying in bed, surrounded by marbles, in like marble bliss. But a funny thing happens. He can't sleep. In fact, he doesn't sleep all night, because he's haunted by one question. Did she give me all the candy? I love you guys so much. And the truth that I have experienced in love is this: both love of God and love of another person. The real problem with holding something back is not because it's wrong or sinful. When you hold some part of you back from God, you are the one who will never know the feeling, trust that you are receiving everything from God. I think that's because we're fallen. It's like we can only really imagine that which we've tried to do. And of course we know that God will love us unconditionally. But in my experience, until you try to love God unconditionally, it's hard to feel what God's love is like. And with another person, especially, the marbles that you hide will be the joy that you're giving up. There is some intimacy that is better than any other kind. It is the intimacy that comes with knowing you have given all the marbles. And it sort of like frees your heart to really feel like and not be haunted by the possibility that you're not getting all the candy. So give everything. That's scary, but it's better than being haunted by having kept things back. Give God everything, my dears, and give each other everything. What they want to hear, what they don't want to hear, your doubts, anything that you feel. Beware of the word protection. I've heard both of you use it in different ways. That you want to make sure that you're responsible in love and that you don't sort of lose your mind about things and that you protect yourselves. Well, as your godmother, I just want to say protection is a great idea. In fact, it's one of the best ideas the world has. But as it says in Romans, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds in Christ. It is no longer I who live, Galatians,